Hi, everybody. You're tuned in to Where Waters Meet, a podcast featuring discussions on fly fishing, art, all things outdoors with a conservation focus. Hey, everybody. It's Alex.
I'm John. Johnny, sorry.
Yeah, Johnny.
Oh, hey, man.
And here you guys go. You're at Where Waters Meet podcast. We're at the gallery at Western Maine Yurts again. We got a new work of art up here on the easel today, and we will be featuring a episode on that called At the Easel. We have done a little bit of talking, and we had mentioned that this show is going to evolve over time, and we don't know what the right mixes of things, so to speak. But at the easel, we're going to mix in episodes that are just that. They'll be at the easel, and we'll be able to talk about works of art. I'll probably go over some techniques, materials, products I use, and kind of, just what goes into my art. So
I really like that one, Alex. What's the name of that one? Like Sweet Cheeks?
I wish that I had talked to you. I would have called it Sweet Cheeks. No, that one's Rainbow Reflections.
That's not bad either.
I like Sweet Cheeks.
You can have it.
Okay, next one. Next rainbow one. Don't steal it, anybody. Sweet Cheeks. It's been decided. But yeah, so the next episode that you guys see will be a At the Easel episode. So moving on though, I wanted to thank everybody. We wung it and didn't really know what we were doing on episode 2.
Yeah, definitely.
And I mean, I was happy with it. We didn't sound completely incompetent.
No, I thought we did pretty good.
Yeah, so it was fun. We had a really good time doing it, and thank you for giving us a platform to be able to talk to all of you guys at, and we appreciate all the support and all the kind words and
definitely
subscribers and all the likes. It was great. So, but moving forward, we're going to do our At the Vice.
Hey, can I throw in a little correction of my Hornberg? I forgot to add, like, the original had a jungle cot tied in for an eye on the original Hornberg pattern. Not just the original, just how they're tied in general.
Yeah.
I don't have the dollars to spend on jungle capes. And
and the amount of flies that we go through, it's, if you go through 40 or 50 Hornbergs a year, it's a little pricey. And to be honest with you, the way that we fish those, I don't know as though it really improves the way it fishes.
Yeah, I don't think it really matters for how we do it.
You can even get a fake digitally printed plastic jungle cock if you want. I tried that, and I wasn't very happy with it.
I've never tried it, so
yeah,
maybe saltwater patterns work. I don't know.
We're just down and dirty the way we tie it quick and fast, and then we fish them, and they fish really good.
Yep.
So, but yeah, that's good. I'm glad that you brought that up. I'm sure we'll have corrections on episode 4 regarding this episode, so you'll probably hear a lot of those.
Yeah. Well, you won't have a correction on this fly because this is yours.
I don't know about that, but we'll see. So
it's a version.
It's So at the Vice, we are. Well, maybe I should first kind of like let everybody know like what ultimately this episode is about, and because this At the Vice kind of ties into it, and I'm glad John suggested it because I was gonna have us do bobbins today. Bobbins. Good old bobbins. But yeah, so we're going to talk about salmon today. Maine landlocked salmon fishing. We're going to do our best to discuss it with no bodies of water mentioned, because we want to talk about the species and we want to talk about tactics, but we don't want to be spot burning or giving people any just show up at this location at this time and do this.
Yeah. Give us the intel.
Yeah. So we're going to go into depth into the style of fishing. And so in doing that, we're going to discuss a fly today at the Vice section of the show, which is, it's basically a hot bead crystal bugger. I mean, that's exactly what it is. But I have fished this for so many years that my friends that fish with me call it the AP special, which I don't know why, but but that's what they call it. But yeah, so this is essentially a bugger style pattern, and we will cut to a little close up video of this so that you guys can see it. And it has essentially 3 materials. 4 if you add flash into the tail, and if you consider an orange bead
a material.
But most of the time, the way that I tie this is with a somewhat sparse marabou tail, and then it has crystal chenille wrapped on the body, and my favorite color for this is olive, but I do also tie it in black and white. And then it has just an orange hot bead, and I can probably tie one of these in 45 seconds.
Yep.
This is like less than a minute tie. It's the easiest tie in the world. And
it is.
And John ties them the same way. I've seen him use a little bit of a different chenille at times that's maybe a little bit bushier.
Yeah. It's just what I could find at the time.
Yeah, and those work good too.
Yep.
They work really good too. But the one thing that I would say for me is important with this fly, because I swing this fly at varying speeds, is I hate really bushy, webby marabou. So in the video that we showed, you'll see that this has pretty loose,
straight fibers.
Yeah, the fibers are very straight and they aren't stuck together. They don't have webbing in the bottom. And what ends up happening, the more that I've tied and the more I've used marabou over the years, I end up going for much more looser fibered marabou as opposed to the webby stuff, because it'll move and undulate in the water and it doesn't get matted up.
Yep.
And unfortunately, material manufacturers need to sell product. So like you'll see things that are like buggerboo.
Yep.
And basically it's just really garbage, like quality marabou that they want to sell. So they call it buggerboo, and then people put it on woolly buggers, and it has this giant webby bushy tail, and it doesn't really work very good. So this fly, I would say a key to the way that I tie it and the success that I've seen with it is a very sparse tail. And then you can wrap this as thick or thin as you want. I mean, the biggest thing that I'm trying to achieve when I wrap my crystal chenille on this is just making sure that it doesn't mat down, in that, because you can almost palmer the crystal chenille. Sometimes it lays in and it wants to wrap over itself and then it mats down. But so yeah, I just end up wrapping that up through, and then then you just finish it off behind the bead. And most of the time I don't tie it with crystal flash in the tail. I don't know what you do. Do you put flash in the tail? This one has flash, which is I just did it just for something different, but pretty much 90% of the time I tie it with no flash because I don't know as though it matters.
Yeah, I don't. Same here. If I'm feeling a little feisty or whatever, fancy, I'll throw it in. One thing I will mention, how you tie this, you don't use any extra weight wraps, no lead wraps.
No, I don't.
So
I don't. And I do fish this for all trout species at certain times, and I will fish this on a sinking line at times. But I do think that it's important to note, since we are going to be talking about landlocked salmon fishing today, that I almost 100% of the time in the fall when I'm fishing for landlocked salmon will fish on a floating line. But that's because they like to look up. So, and these are good in different sizes too. For salmon fishing, I tie these extremely small, depending on what body of water I'm in, what the flows are. water clarity, whether the water is on the rise, whether the water's on the drop. Like those sizings have a lot to do with it. But I've found that if I need to get down more, just having a larger bead usually does what I need.
Yeah. No, and so not only like during the rest of the year, I agree with you. Salmon fishing, I tend to use a floating line with this. During the rest of the year, this will go on a sink tip or sinking line.
Yeah.
Intermediate. If I'm doing small streams, if I'm like creek hopping or something, I'll do it on a floater and drop it through plunge pulls too.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, and out of the drift boat, I use this quite a bit for, newbies and clients or what have you. This is a great fly. And
that's what I usually use with my tandem on with a Hornberg.
Yeah, this is it's a good attractor fly. And I think the thing that's kind of cool to note about this, and, crystal buggers aren't new to anybody. I mean, everybody fishes crystal buggers and they fish hot bead buggers. The one thing that I will say about this is I use no hackle wrapped along the body of this. I like having as thin a profile as possible with it. And I keep it very simple. And I'm not wanting it to look buggy. I think that it's looking more bait fish like the way that I tie this. But something of note that I think is kind of cool is, you have flies that are like, if you fish stocked waters, they're like, oh man, these are great stock fish getters. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you could go stick a pellet fly out and catch a bunch of stocked fish. But yeah, get that Ricola in there, John.
Yeah, get it right inside me.
Yeah, you guys are going to have to bear with John coughing. He's coming off a near-death experience from weeks ago.
I don't know. I just got back from the fly fishing show, and what was it? Marlboro or
Marlboro, yeah.
Mass. I don't know. I got a cough or something down there.
You'll get that in Mass.
You will.
Yeah. But yeah, so this fly, it fishes good for. I've caught so many wild brook trout on it.
It's a confidence fly.
It is. It's just like it's down and dirty. It's ugly. It's an embarrassing tie.
It is.
It is just so ugly. And you get done and you're like, man, this thing works so good and it's so easy. And I'm kind of embarrassed that I like this so much that I tie like 50 of them at a time.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of the rundown of this fly. I would suggest trying it out. And like John said, it's a confidence fly. Like if you're having a bad day and nothing's coming off the water, the fish aren't feeding, like sometimes you just put a really flashy olive crystal bugger with a bright neon orange head on the front of it and fish go, ooh.
Piece of candy.
Yeah. Yeah. So AP special, hot bead crystal bugger, whatever you guys want to try it. I would suggest having these in your box.
Definitely.
We go nowhere without these. I mean, we always have these.
Yep.
I mean, I bring these out to New York even with me. Like I just have them. Maybe that's what we ought to do. Maybe when we get bored someday, we ought to say, let's see how many fish species we can catch with this stupid fly.
I've caught coho on them.
Really?
Yep.
Well, there you go.
Yep. You catch coho on anything. One thing you said you tie them black and white. I do tie them in black. I haven't tied them in white in a couple of years. So I'll probably tie up a few of those in coming weeks.
Yeah, I like white for salmon. I like olive and white probably better than black for fall run salmon, I would say. Those are kind of my go-to colors.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, that painting right there, I painted. I don't have it in his mouth. I should have, but it had a big bright white.
I know. I was there.
Yeah, AP. Yep. Yeah, the blurry one. But all right. Well, so we'll move on from at the Vice, but that's a worthwhile fly, guys. Like I would tie it, and if you're a beginner, it's a great beginner fly to tie. It's just like we said, sparse marabou for the tail. Just wrap the hook shank with crystal chenille and have a hot bead at the head, and you're done.
That's it, man.
You're done.
It's killer.
Yeah. So, all right. So moving on though, we already went over the at the easel thing. So we're going to just get into the meat of the show, which is salmon fishing. And we'll hopefully spend the next 45 minutes kind of going over tactics and methods that we use, and how special of a fish they are.
Yeah.
And just to give everybody a recap, there were 4 bodies of water, which I should have looked this up, but I think so. In Maine, currently we have 300. Well, the state lists 300 lakes as containing landlocked salmon and 320 miles of river containing landlocked salmon. I think the river, I mean, that's really hard to calculate. I think that actually is pretty low.
I'd agree. It's probably low.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's pretty low. But anyways, it is a very widely dispersed fish. And, everybody knows Sebago, salmon as being, the gold standard, I guess, so to speak. And that genetic strain is responsible for landlocked salmon throughout the country and
throughout the world.
In the world. Yeah. So it's really special. But we aren't going to talk about specific bodies of water. We're just going to talk in general. But to get into the history a little bit of how they began, there were only actually 4 bodies of water in the state of Maine that had landlocked salmon occurring naturally, because they actually are essentially Atlantic salmon that are just landlocked, just like their name. And they existed in the Sebago Lake watershed, Grand Lake watershed,
GLS,
and I believe Sebec and Green Pond or Lake watersheds, I believe. But fact checkers,
yeah, stick it down in the comments.
yeah, let us know. Let us know. But yeah, so, and we're primarily Western Maine fishing people from Rangeley down through, and we have a number of watersheds that we fish.
Yep.
They pop up in tons of different locations,
Yep.
but there's other places that we have fished, but
we're not up there a whole lot.
exactly, like the East Outlet and the West Branch and Grand Lake Stream. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And so, but that's just a few. And there's also people that troll for them. There's bodies of waters that are lakes that don't have river systems, that people are able to target them in as much. So trolling's a big thing.
Yeah. There's a lot of really good lake populations.
There is. And the interesting thing about landlocked salmon is they, unlike any other fish I've seen, that we have, that's in the salmonid, family, they are insanely just attracted to moving water.
Yeah.
Like if it's moving, they're like, yeah, let's go.
Yep.
It's time.
Yeah. And that's probably one of the easiest ways to target them in the fall.
Yeah. I mean, and in the fall, it's, if you find a lake, that has a culvert with water flow coming in, they'll be there. You know what I mean? It's like they're anywhere.
You're not joking.
Yeah.
They're searching for that running water. Yeah.
They are. And even like pinch points where there's like a lake and then there's a pinch point to a smaller section and there's condensed flow in that area, they'll be there. They don't necessarily have to just go to rivers or streams, but they just like moving water, and they're opportunists too, because it doesn't have to be fall time necessarily, even too. There's, without mentioning names, many bodies of water throughout the state where there's landlocked salmon movement in June and July even. There's A runs and B runs of them, and they and it's no different than true Atlantic salmon too. You know what I mean? If you have high water events, they'll enter rivers, in June as well. So, and then they just kind of hold tight and they wait until it's time to do their dance and spawn in the spring. Or you have a bee run where they'll enter in the fall. So they're really unique. I like them. I know we both love fishing for them, but I like them because they are kind of complicated to get figured out
Yeah, yeah. On certain bodies of water, you'll be scratching your head like, what's going on? And
Yeah.
it may take you a couple of years or maybe longer to figure out what's going on in that system.
Yeah. And there's not, there's not as much like, out there for information, I guess, in regard to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As far as, at least I never found any. I kind of became obsessed by them for a period of time and just wanted to figure out as many ways that I could fish for them and catch them.
Yeah.
And they're complicated, and every ecosystem that they exist in is different. So it's not
Absolutely.
like, yeah,
It's absolutely. I might just it holds the fish holds a special place in my heart because it was the first fish that I caught on the fly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna hop in.
You should.
I'm
Go for it.
I'm gonna tell a story.
Yeah, this is a great story.
Alex's brother-in-law kind of got me into fly fishing. Well, not kind of, he did. I did some work for him, and I think he owed me like $300 or something like that. And he went down to Cabela's and he bought me was it an RLS kit or something like that.
Yeah. That was my first kit too, the
Yeah.
Cabela's RLS. Yeah.
Anyway, I messed around with like that by myself for a whole fall. Horrible. Like getting tangled in trees. And if you guys know the river that I started out on, it's like, you shouldn't start trying to be a fly fisherman on this river. It's just impossible to get any sort of cast. And basically I gave up on it. One day I was walking out. I'm like, you can take this fly fishing and bleh. And it was like, I think it was the next year. Chris called me. It was like July, and we just had this hellacious rainstorm. Everything was blown out, and I hadn't touched that rod since the previous fall. And he's like, "Grab your rod, come on, we're gonna go fish. We probably won't catch anything." But he brought me down, and we walked way out and tied on a olive and brown woolly bugger, and I.
Salmon candy,
basically. And I casted that thing up, and we're standing about to our hips because it was deep. It was like super deep. It was blown out. The river was blown out, and super tanniny. You couldn't see more than 6 inches down.
Pretty common
Where we fish, but so. I cast it up, let that thing drift, and it stopped basically at my feet. But there's no indication of anything. It just stopped.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and it felt like I hit bottom. And I'm like tugging on this thing, and Chris is right next to me. But then I feel it going like ding, ding, ding. But I'm not sure. I've never caught a fish before, so I don't know if that's a fish or if it's just the water hitting my line.
Yeah.
And I hand it to Chris, and Chris, I go, "Is that a fish?" And he holds on to it. He goes, "Yeah, that's a fish." And he hands it back, and I'm just standing there. It seems like forever. We're just standing there. I'm holding this rod. Nothing's happening. This fish isn't moving. I'm like, "Dude," I'm like yanking on it. Nothing's going. And he's like, "I don't know. Like give the reel seat like a tap."
Yeah.
He's like, "That might wake him up or something." I did. I hit it. That thing just went zzz, went right upstream.
Airborne,
doing the somersaults. I got it back in, took another run, did the same thing, somersaults, and it made one more run. And Chris is like, "I don't think we're going to get this fish in." And as soon as he said that thing, it made a run right for us. It jumped out of the air. I'm not kidding, guys. This fish hit me square in the chest, and Chris took the net and netted it on my chest. So that was my first fish on a fly. It was a 21-inch hen.
Never to be replicated again.
No. Well, I've caught.
Well, I mean, I don't think that you're ever going to have one jump and hit you.
No.
I've caught a lot, and I've never had one. I've had them jump out and hit a bank, like the other shore, but like never had one like leap at me like that. They're crazy.
They're awesome.
Yeah.
The acrobatics they put on, they'll rival a steelhead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're crazy.
Yeah.
Like a steelhead, they'll do the tail walks on you down the riffles, and they'll do the big like mako shark like leaps, but they don't do the cartwheel stuff. And like, you'll just like, there's times where a big salmon will come out and it's like they'll do like 5 cartwheels and they're like that far above the water, and then sometimes they'll come 5 feet out and do multiple flips and turns, and I've been broken off many times by them just wrapping my leader up in them. And but yeah, the first experience. Yeah. It's I remember my first salmon, and it was on the same river that you're talking about. And I had no clue what I was doing, just fishing. And I remember there was a log, and I kind of got across the stream and just got a swing coming down through, and it hit. But the thing that I remember the most was just being just in awe of what it could do coming out of the water, because I hadn't hooked a fish, and like the pull is great, you know what I mean? They can be really crazy, but it's really the acrobatics that like, and I don't know about you, I do it for steelhead fishing too, but it's like every time that you like haven't caught like a salmon or a steelhead or something like that for a while, and they do the big acrobatics, they do it, and you're just kind of like,
that's
wow.
it.
You kind of have your moment where
that's what I needed.
Yeah, that feels good.
Give him a fix.
Yeah. So that like, I remember that, because I remember, I remember you were like, I'm done with fly fishing.
Oh yeah.
And but then that you caught that salmon, and then you were like, maybe this is good.
Well, I truly thank Chris, because he got me into fly fishing because he saw that I needed something. There was health problems in my family at the time. I was getting down in the dumps, and fly fishing turned it the other way.
Yeah. I think that's good that you said that. Like fly fishing is always been there for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And there's so many times where, life's hard and everybody needs something good. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's like, and the fish are always fair, and they're always there. Yeah. And even if you don't catch anything, it's still just good to get out.
It's my reset.
Yeah. I remember after my mom passed, I remember us going fishing, and I remember catching like nice fish though. And I remember like looking at them, and I'd be like, John, this isn't even doing anything for me, but I'm going to keep going, because I know I love this, but I was just so depressed. So like, fishing, it's great. And like, I think of all the people I've met, even we're sitting here right now, and we're, doing a podcast together, and it's because we love all the people that we've met in the community that we're a part of. And like, fly fishing it's an amazing thing. So people that haven't done it, try it out. It truly is life changing, I think.
It definitely is. I mean, the people I've met on the river, is a direct correlation of what I'm actually doing now. It's like I met X, Y, and Z, and now I'm in Alaska on float planes and stuff. It's crazy.
Taking you some insane places.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah. No, it's pretty stinking special. But we got off on that caveat of, which was worthwhile, but back to salmon, the good stuff.
Yeah.
But, I mean, we fish bodies of water that have stock salmon and wild salmon. I think it might be a good little discussion to talk about maybe some of the differences between them, and kind of what can happen with stock salmon, cause we do see overpopulations of stock salmon a lot. There's kind of a delicate balance, especially in ecosystems where salmon didn't originally exist.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of bodies of water that salmon, stock salmon do very well in certain lakes and ponds, but if they get overpopulated, then they'll get really racy and skinny.
Yep.
And, you might have a lake that's full of 16-inch salmon, and they can't really even get past that. So like,
I mean, if you're on a body of water that has a bunch of 16-inch salmon, and you can keep two or three,
Yeah.
Most places it'll help the population.
Yeah, and then you get into places like, which I said we weren't going to mention bodies of water,
Where
but
you don't even think about keeping a salmon.
yeah, and then there's also places where they aren't supposed to be, and I will talk in very general terms, but in the Rangeley Lakes area, there's bodies of water that salmon aren't really supposed to exist, and it's to the detriment of the native landlocked salmon that are there. And I mean, sorry,
Brook trout.
brook trout, and landlocked salmon didn't originally exist in Rangeley. So there's places where there's streams and rivers that are becoming overpopulated with salmon, and it's not to the benefit of the brook trout there. But also, talking about behaviors of wild salmon versus stock salmon, I personally have found that if I'm fishing a body of water that has migratory wild salmon, they are more quick to adapt to the conditions because they grew up there.
Yeah.
They know what to do.
It's kind of amazing.
It is amazing.
Yeah.
Like
you can fool them for about a day and a half with one of these.
You can. Yeah. And then they're on naturals.
Yeah.
And they're lockjawed, and they'll sit down and they won't feed at all, and they know exactly the opportune times to feed.
Yep.
And they'll eat very small bug life, even though they're big, and they know how to conserve energy.
Yep.
And but in the flip side, though, like the stock salmon,
fish that.
Yeah, they're much more willing, like for a longer period of time. But that's because if you get stocked at 12 or 14-inch size in a lake, you went from eating pellets to you went to being a smelt eater for the most part. Obviously, salmon eat other things and odd things like June bugs and all kinds of different events like in lakes, but primarily smelt eaters. Yeah. So they'll stay keyed in, and I find that they don't swap over to the naturals quite as quick.
Yeah, especially like fall drops.
Yeah.
Like if you want to tell them what a fall drop.
Yeah, go for it.
Basically, there's a lot of dams in the state that have like overtopping, or sometimes they have sluiceways or something that the salmon can escape from the lake or what pond or whatever body of water they're in into a moving river. And those are probably, I like fishing for those because it doesn't really hurt my feelings too much. It's like they don't really belong in that system. They're not natural to that system usually. They're probably a little easier to fool, and it gives like some native wild fish in other areas a little break. So
I would agree with that. And I think that, it gets into the ethics of what we talk about a lot, and from a conservation standpoint, you have that discussion at a certain point because, there's a lot of bodies of water where salmon do drop out. It's not just one. This happens throughout the whole state.
Throughout the whole state.
Like we said, they want moving water. So, I mean, they can jump over grates. They can go through some of them. They find a way. It's unbelievable where they'll pop up. But if you do have an area where you can fish for stocked salmon like that, some of our wild salmon fisheries are struggling a little bit. You know what I mean? And then if you get into a time of year where there could be spawning that's taking place, we don't have anything in place here in Maine to prevent people from fishing over spawning fish.
No, we don't.
Other than if a season is closed.
Yeah, and we actually, some bodies of water have extended seasons during spawn runs.
Yeah, so then it gets into what do you do?
Yeah.
And then I think it gets into ethics. Our personal ethics with fishing is like a delicate balance because you could have a season date, and then you could have a early run of fish.
Yep.
And it could be to a point where, yes, the season is open, but am I fishing over just actively spawning fish? And then you could have a time where there's a season, but the spawn's super late. You don't have to worry about that because fish are just entering the river at the end of it.
Yep.
And then you run into the ethics of, there's a lot of salmon. There's a lot of areas where you can catch salmon where they aren't supposed to be, and like you said, they're stocked, and they aren't going to live. They will pass away, and
some of them do reproduce, but nothing sustainable.
no, right. So it's like at that point, what do you do? Is it okay to push that limit and fish in an extended season for fish, even though they might be actively spawning, or is it okay to do it if you know how to identify reds and to stay away from reds so that you are only fishing for salmon that are on the move, that are entering the system and haven't been in the system and are doing their thing. So it's like it's an interesting topic.
Yeah, in the last fall, the last few falls, we've had really low water.
Yeah.
And some of my old places where I really enjoy fishing, I'll pass. If the streams are trickle, I don't feel ethically right fishing when there's like 6 inches of water in some of my spots. I'll pass, and I'll go for those drop spots, and even some of those drop spots in this year especially was low. There's a few spots where like I've got no problem fishing there, but you had to fish really different if you're going to fish there, because you had to like artificially induce a swing. It's like the flows were so bad, like you couldn't even get a proper swing.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe we should get into presentation. That might be a good segue into that.
Yeah, you go for that.
I love talking about that. I'm a nut about presentation. I obsess over it. I think about it. It's crazy, but yeah, like I think that's why I like salmon fishing though.
Yeah.
I think I like it because they are very temperamental. They're insanely reactive to flows, water clarity. Whether the water is rising, whether the water is dropping, there's so many factors that I'm calculating in my head when I'm thinking about presentation. So, but my experience with, take a fly like this, like we just reviewed, is that if you can figure out how to present this at a sideways profile swinging to a salmon, you're going to have greater luck. And if you have the patience to commit to a swing, you're going to have better luck. I've been in many bodies of water where, somebody will be down below me and they'll say, go ahead and fish that pool. I got something little keeps nipping my line. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I'll be like, oh yeah. Yeah. They found a salmon. But yeah, so they're chasers. They're like many other salmon species, not just Atlantics in general, that it does not take very long in the fall when they enter a river to not really be as concerned about eating. You know what I mean? And so you're looking for reactionary bites, and speed and presentation is everything. And so if you're fishing a sinking line, that's one thing. I prefer not to fish a sinking line because I like the action of the swing that I get with a floating line. And my setup will typically be fairly long fluoro leaders so that I can get whatever fly I'm fishing under the water surface, and preferably a rise in the water column is my preference. So if I was to see a salmon give itself up because it's rolling or what have you, I would probably try to cast about 15 feet upstream of that, and completely dependent upon the flow and how fast the flow is would determine on if I start my swing at that point. But if I can, I will mend upstream. So then at that point, that fly is able to have a period of time to sink. And as that fly is sinking, my fly line, which is my arm, is going to create a belly. And then at this point, say that John's Mike is the salmon, that fly it's sunk in the water column. Then when this belly starts to come tight, that fly is going to come across the face of that fish while rising in the water column at a sideways profile. And usually what they'll do is they'll peel off and chase that fly. So you oftentimes will see a chaser. You'll get short strike nips, or sometimes they just crush it and take it. You don't really know. But then at that point, if that swing comes dead downstream, so I'm at like dead hang down below me, oftentimes a salmon will hang around and just kind of like look at it. And then as you start to strip that up to yourself, they'll hit it. So that's kind of the basics of it. But the biggest thing is, like John was saying, low water times. Like sometimes you have to generate a swing. And it's the weirdest thing that they still want that presentation. And there's times where I've fished where water temps are plenty cold, like this past fall, actually. We'll let John hack away over here.
Dying.
He's getting it. He's getting it.
Just swallow that one.
But like this fall was a great example of that, because we did have low water, very cold water, but we just had low water, and we fished for some salmon, and you had to manufacture a swing, which is really just kind of a weird thing to think about. And it's kind of hard to do, where you start to slowly strip. And then when you get to the backside of that strip, which is really slow and long, then when you come back to be able to strip again, you actually have to slightly move that rod tip so that you don't like have a hesitation in it. And then you stop the rod tip and then you strip a little bit. And they like a very, very smooth swing.
Yeah. Certain bodies of water, but one thing I like about salmon fishing is it kind of gets me back on the bank. It's one of the times where I get out of my boat and I'm actively fishing.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's a certain bite window when they just go crazy for streamers. And that excites me. That I love to like just covering ground, just fast strips. It doesn't happen a super lot, but when the streamer bite, when they are in this aggressive, like
active feeding.
I don't even know if it's active. Like the males get aggressive when they're guarding their reds, I guess. And like even the females will get super aggressive. It doesn't last that long. It's like not a sustainable hatch, I guess. But I have a lot of fun doing that. And another way, probably the most fun I ever had, and I've only done it once, was I was fishing. I saw these salmon just rocketing out, grabbing dragonflies, and I have no idea why I had dragonflies. I've never fished dragonflies before or since, but I had a couple in my box.
It's Providence.
It was. Oh my goodness, that was like probably my second most fun I've ever had with dry flies.
Yeah,
and throwing stuff like that.
Yeah,
and that was super fun.
It's funny that you say that, because I do. Talking
and
about
that was early fall.
Yeah,
it was pre-spawn.
Yeah, and like swinging is more primarily a fall tactic, I'd say, for me. But I do have that in my repertoire for salmon fishing earlier in the year. I have different styles of swingings that I do with naturals in there, very deep water swings, and they aren't anything that I ever read about. It's just me learning, because I was obsessed with just trying everything humanly possible to do it. And that is effective. But the other thing is there is a season on certain bodies of water, and they're a blast because they'll take stoneflies. They are pretty opportunistic. If you do have a body of water that has salmon in the month of July, and this is, a huge range of rivers that I'm talking about where you could do this, but they're very opportunistic. They want the big meal. They like that. And it's usually low light hours. Like salmon are very much in the
eat
brown
dusk.
trout area as far as, everybody talks about brown trout liking low light, low light, low light, low light, and they do. But a landlocked salmon's no different. I mean, we've had so many situations where we've fished for 3 hours in an area where we know there's fish, and then all of a sudden it just turns on.
Good tip if you want to know if you think there's salmon there, but you're getting nothing like all day long, like wait to dusk and just see what starts happening on the surface.
Yeah, and they feed into the dark too.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
it's crazy. They're a very unique, very temperamental, and that's why I love them. They're a lot to figure out, and when you do figure out, it's absolutely, amazing. But what else did I have on the list?
do you have any favorite emergers or caddis patterns that you like to use? I know I've got a couple.
Yeah, go for it.
I love swinging like a LaFontaine sparkle pupa.
Yeah,
it's great, and I don't swing a ton of wet flies, but I like swinging that thing.
yeah.
Excuse me. when it bellies out, yeah, you can edit that out. There's just something about that swing, man. Right, it like hits that belly and then it starts coming up in the column. And
yeah, and I agree. Like, and I think that's they do like moving stuff, and like if you get them in the right temperament, they're a fast fish. They aren't like I mean, that's what's neat. You'll see them sip. They'll do a nice slow little trout sip and sip stuff, but like caddis emergers are a great example where sometimes they just hit it like
it's
rock.
weird. They tend to hit that caddis emerger like harder than they do a stream. Like when you're describing how you swing these.
Yeah,
it is the most subtle of take. Fishing where we fish for these, and it doesn't feel like anything.
It doesn't, and I think that those are the non-eat bites. You know what I mean? I think that those are the bites where, whether it be color or what, they're kind of being very reactive to it. Like fishing these with this head, the orange, bead on this. I would say, I mean, there's been years where it's been higher, but like in the fall, I've had years where, on average, I'm probably 75% males. And I really think that you're getting a reaction that's aggressive because they're hopped up with the orange as opposed to them wanting to eat. And I agree, it's a different take. And then it's also, the stonefly, like we were talking about, like that on the surface. Like I've had them rival largemouth bass taking stoneflies, at 9 o'clock at night, on a June, day. And so there's a big difference, but between the different takes. But as far as fly selection, beyond like buggers, I was really into like Carrie Stevens style.
I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, me too.
Like I mean,
I like a lot of the classic flies for salmon fishing.
Yeah, and I've gotten away from that, and I'd like to kind of get back, but I was the Parmacini Queen and the Gray Ghost and Red Ghost and a number of those different ones.
Back in the day, the Montreal whore was my go-to.
Yeah, the Montreal lady that walks the streets with no purse.
I think Beans calls it the floozy, Montreal floozy now.
The floozy.
Yeah.
That is a good fly.
Yeah.
That is a good fly. But I think size is the biggest thing that I play around with. So if I'm fishing a larger profile streamer or even smaller at times, there's times where a fish will give itself up but doesn't really commit. And that's where I'll tie a trailer on, and I usually fish like LaFontaine's good. Caddis emergers are good. In the fall, I really like fishing classic, like just partridge and orange or partridge and olive, soft hackles. I love little soft hackles. pheasant tail nymphs work. I love champagne caddis. And that's probably my favorite, like, summer salmon fly, to be quite honest with you.
You actually should do a feature on that because it's not a very well-known pattern.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a hard tie. I mean, we could do it. I've committed myself and tied them in the past, and where you actually take mono and then, you put little UV cure air bubbles along that, and it's a little bit of a pain to make the materials for it. At one point in time, I saw it. There was actually, you could buy that somewhere, and I can't find it for the life of me now where it is. I wish that I could just buy the strands. It would make it a much faster tie.
Oh, you could actually buy.
You could buy caddis air
is kind
bubbles.
of monotonous, like putting those little drops in the mono.
I tried doing it the other day, and I had thin, and I had flex, and I had thick, and I really kind of needed medium Solares to do it. But you basically like stretch out a piece of mono, and then you just take your UV cure and you just put little dollops on that, and then you let them create little balls, and then you UV cure that, and then you got fake air bubbles, and then you can tie that into a caddis pattern. And it kind of looks like a caddis that has developed that air sac on the top of its back that's, racing up to the surface to be able to emerge. And I have had unbelievable luck with that as a standalone fly. I've had good luck with that, with soft hackles behind it as well, which kind of looks a little earlier in the stage of emergence. And when times are slow, I have done really good with extremely deep water swings with that. I think the biggest problem with swinging in like the style that I've had success with is it is the most boring thing to do in the world.
Yeah, sometimes it's pretty rough waiting for that thing.
It's boring. You got to commit to it. You have to have confidence that what you're doing is going to work, or you give up quick.
It takes forever. Do you fish for them any different in the springtime?
I fish. I find that like early season, I do better with stripping than I do later in the year. You know what I mean? If you're fishing like streamer patterns and what have you, they're kind of a little more opportunistic at that point.
Yeah. I still tend to find them at those drop spots in the river systems that, had some top over. I still find some fish hanging around in the springtime.
Yeah. And I don't fish for them in the spring as much as I used to. I don't now because I'm kind of searching around here, on the Andro and stuff. And I probably this year will be no different. We'll be out figuring out where all the wild fish are early.
Yeah. And that's one thing about this project we've been working on. It cuts down on where we've been fishing.
It does. I actually, what I was thinking about the other day is I was like, I don't know if we're going to get the skiff out much this year.
Yeah.
Because, it's like between smallie fishing during the hot months, with clients and guiding for trout, in May and June. I want to get out on the skiff, but.
I know there's a lot of effort and work we put in on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully that all doesn't go to waste this year and it just sits. We'll get out. We'll get out. I want to try carp fishing too.
Yeah. Me too.
Yeah.
I don't know why. They're kind of ugly.
They're very ugly.
Be something different. It's always nice to have a little reset and change things up.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. It's like if you want to catch something that looks like it should be in a fish tank, go carp fishing in Maine. It just isn't done much. It's good practice. Yeah. We built a skiff together and for saltwater, and we went to Florida right as soon as we got it done. We ought to do an episode on that, on the build.
The trials and tribulations.
We should do an episode on that. But yeah, we like to sight fish when we get a chance to, and pole around in that. And yeah. I don't know though. We'll see how things go this year. But I don't know. Did we cover everything on the salmon though? Pretty much.
Yeah. Unless there's something you want to say about high water, but I mean.
No, they're just
they tend to wake up. They tend to move.
They do, yeah, and I mean that's ingrained in them from their true Atlantic, counterparts because they do the same thing. If it's June and there's a high water event, they'll make their way in and then they'll just sit there and wait till spawn time in the fall, just the same.
Favorite fish in Maine to catch?
That's a good question. Yeah. I mean, I think a salmon, like fight wise and the style of fishing, is my favorite. Beauty wise, we were talking about that earlier. Like their cheeks in the fall are just, they're gorgeous. I mean, I picked, that's one up on the wall there that I painted back a couple weeks ago. And I painted that because of the cheeks. I had a close up and I was like, man, that's really pretty.
No, they are.
But
all the turquoise and stuff.
Yeah, and they'll have purples and blues, and they kind of got everything. And it looks like if you get a close up, they'll have like this purple. It almost looks like eyeliner around their eye. It's pretty crazy. But I mean, I think I like brook trout. Like, I don't know, fall brook trout are hard to beat prettiness wise. But I don't like the style of fishing. I don't like the style of fishing for them as much.
Best fighting fish in the state of Maine. Go.
Salmon.
Okay.
Yeah, landlocked salmon. Yeah. Well, who knows? We haven't caught a carp.
Yeah, that's true. Worst fighting fish in the state of Maine? Trout.
A pickerel.
Trout.
Oh, for a trout?
Yeah.
Oh man. Probably a brown.
You think so?
Or a brook trout.
I'm saying.
I mean, one of the two. Yeah. But it's like you never know because it's like. A brook trout, just you catch those brook trout. You'll catch a big brook trout and you get him in and you're like, this isn't that much, and then you get him in the net and he's just like,
yeah, like it's like on the line. They're nothing in the net. It's a different story.
Yeah, they're like, let me out of here. But yeah, and I mean, and if you're talking about rainbow trout, like I mean, the wild rainbow trout that we have around here are a completely different story. They're like mini steelhead.
Steelhead, yeah.
Yeah, compared to the stocked, rainbow trout that we have. Like they're I mean, they can pull pretty good, but they don't jump and do the acrobatic stuff either. Yeah. But
I brought us on a whole different tangent.
Yeah.
We should probably stop.
Fish. We're doing good. I don't know if next episode I'm going to do, well, no, I guess I am going to do on the easel for the next episode. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. I brought that up. So like we'll do, I'll go over some art stuff and we'll probably talk about, maybe both of the paintings behind me, and that will be episode 4 because we're recording episode 3 now.
Yep. And
then, I think episode 5, we're going to have a different guest, which I'm excited about. So yeah, we're looking forward to that. And guess we don't need to prolong anything any more than we already have.
No, it's a good talk.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's Landlocked Salmon, and that's the Crystal Hot Bead Bugger, or AP Special. AP Special on the Vice.
You're not giving yourself enough credit. I've seen, this is actually caught on. I've seen other guys other than our crew rocking this thing.
Wow. You can't take credit for a fly. They're the most stolen things that ever existed from, because I mean, this was inspired by a crystal bugger. So I guess whoever the original designer of that is,
but you dumbed it down.
I did. Yeah. I gave the masses what they wanted, if you take a fly that has 5 materials and see if only 2 can work. That's what you do.
That's what you do.
Yeah. But all right, guys. Well, I appreciate all of you. Make sure to like and subscribe if you're on YouTube, and thank you for all the listeners on Spotify and Apple, and we'll see you guys next episode.
See you guys.